Thanks for joining us for Faith Meets Mental Health with our host, Kim Boswell, the Alabama Commissioner of Mental Health. If you have any questions for our host, you can always email mentalhealth@fraser.church. We hope you enjoy this week's episode.
Welcome to Faith Meets Mental Health, a ministry of Fraser Church. I'm Kim Boswell, Commissioner of the Alabama Department of Mental Health, and today I have with me Dr. Dallas Rabig. Dr. Dallas, as we love to call her, works for Department of Early Childhood, and she's our state coordinator for infant early childhood mental health. And as we know, we have a mental health crisis going on with our youth and our young folks. And so today we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how to really be able to support our children and also just how we build resiliency with kids. We do know that 1 in 5 children have a reported mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral disorder, which seems like a lot. That's the most recent data that we have out. And so Dr. Dallas and I wanted to take a little time today to talk about what happens with children when they experience trauma. One of the things we really wanted to talk about today is some of the disasters that have happened in our community recently. As many of you know, we've had tornadoes and other weather events where individuals were harmed in those situations. There were children who lost their homes and lost family members. And so today I asked Dr. Dallas just to tell us a little bit about how we can support kids who are in that situation.
Thank you, Kim. It's nice to be here again. Always nice to have these mental health conversations. So we have had a lot of tornadoes here, it seems like, in the last 3 years or so. And we are seeing a lot of families displaced, families with children. And this all really came, well, let me back up just a little bit. When a child experiences trauma or a traumatic event, such as a tornado, that is considered a moderate event, but can lead to being a toxic event for that child. So, gone unprocessed, for the child, being able to name what happened, to be able to tell a story, lends them a voice to be heard, and then to be heard and to connect with an adult in a nurturing manner allows the child to be able to process and go from being at risk to building resilience, going from being at risk to healing. And we cannot heal from broken experiences unless we are able to have a voice about it, to be able to describe it, to be able to sit in the emotion and name it, and then be able to think past that. And there's an interesting thing that happens neurobiologically. It's a big word. When you're processing something, to be able to connect with another human being and talk, to say it or draw it or act it out, or to talk while moving your hands or crossing your midline of your body, does something in the brain that allows a transformation to occur from trauma to healing. That's why EMDR works so well. And that's, if you're not familiar with it, the client is telling the story while watching a pen light or something go back and forth, or their bilateral stimulation, and it helps them to process the event better. So all of that, the science and that kind of stuff went into the thought behind what we call a crisis comfort kit. So fast forward to the tornadoes. When the Lee County tornadoes came through a few years ago, the Alabama Department of Early Childhood Education realized that a lot of our classrooms with our first class pre-K students had been impacted. Either their homes had been destroyed or their schools had been destroyed to the point where they couldn't go back to their classrooms that they knew. And so a lot of our teachers and coaches within the Office of Readiness, we got together and we collected a bunch of items, and I was specific in my ask. So we were looking for Play-Doh, crayons, pencils, some coloring books, but also some age-appropriate books where if they were a young child, the parent could read the book to the young child, or if they were an adolescent, it was an age-appropriate developmentally appropriate book. So we started off putting all this stuff along with an information sheet on what to do after a natural disaster with children and an instruction sheet for parents, and we put them in gallon-sized Ziploc bags. And we called the Alabama Red Cross, and they came and picked them up and distributed them for us in Ziploc bags. We wanted something lightweight that they could throw in a bag, but something that was small enough. And the following year, Blue Cross and Blue Shield had a bunch of clear backpacks that they couldn't use for a giveaway that they were planning. And so they donated them so that we could use them for crisis comfort kits. And lo and behold, we had another round of storms that year, and we gave out over 100 backpacks that year as well. So fast forward to the newest evolution of, or the newest edition of the crisis comfort kit. So would you like for me, do we have time to kind of go through, or what would you like to do?
Yeah, I think we do. I think it's probably really important for people to kind of connect to, the neurobiology that you described and the brain science, to how that actually helps a child process what they've gone through. I think that would be really helpful. I always think back, I had a friend in high school who their family would always go to church on Sunday evening, and Wizard of Oz would always come on Sunday evening. But unfortunately, she was deathly afraid of storms, because every time Wizard of Oz came on, they left, and all she understood about it was there was a tornado.
Oh, wow.
And she spent her whole life being really afraid of storms until she realized, she never got to see the rest of the story or to process that wasn't the end, and she didn't know what happened to Dorothy. And so it's fascinating how something even that simple, a child seeing something on television, can kind of get stuck in their brain, and nobody realizes that's why this child is so afraid of storms, is because she's got this picture that she's not been able to process. And so I think it's really important to help folks understand kind of what that looks like for kids.
Yeah, exactly. Because we don't think about that. We don't remember.
Right.
A lot of that sometimes. Or maybe we didn't have a traumatic experience as a kid.
Right.
But we become adults and we have all these skills, and we forget that a 4-year-old or even a 12-year-old is not going to have the same resilient skills that you have. And it's important for adults and parents to be able to, what we call, scaffold children to help become those building blocks of learning and development. And you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So
Right.
we at some point we have to support each other. So absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend my family's approach to disaster response. Everyone panicked. It usually was someone yelling, "Get in the car and get in the car fast." And as we know today, that's probably like the worst thing you can do. And so I think, we assume that adults know how to handle those situations, but I think helping our kids do that, and even our adults to be prepared for a disaster, is so much better now, because we have information. We have so much more information than we had when I was that age. It's like you just looked in the sky and looked for the tornado in the sky. So now we have a lot more information, and so I do feel like it gives parents an opportunity to help prepare their children, because we know a week ahead of time we're getting our weather alert,
Right.
and we know the weather days, and so would love for you to share about the packet.
Thank you. So typically the packets are not stuffed this full. Okay, that can be very overwhelming. I just brought several items that are 2 different age appropriate items to kind of show that we create the pack. The kit is very intentional. So we have a folder on the inside, and it includes resources. So there's resources from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, what to do, and they'll be age appropriate depending on the backpack. There's positive parenting information. And then on this other side, which is really cool, this is where we have the parent information sheet, which I'm going to go over as I go through the bag. But we had there's a series called Trinket and Sam, and it is written and illustrated by Dr. Sandra Ghosh Ippen and her husband, Eric Ippen. And so they have one of these for every type of natural disaster. But what's neat about it is it's like a social story coloring book. And so as you're reading through the story, you can stop anytime the child wants to stop and color. Or you can just start coloring in it. And the back of it has instructions for parents and ways to use the social story book to help everyone really in the family to process what's going on. And here you are actually talking, you're coloring, and you're interacting with another human being, which allows the brain to do what it needs to do to become resilient. So we have a paper in here that is all about your crisis comfort kit. And I just want to read this really quick that we stick in here. And it's Building Healthy Brains. So reading with your child offers many benefits. It builds language skills and provides opportunity for your child to learn to read. Even more importantly, reading to your child may reduce anxiety, stimulate brain growth, and may reduce the risk for mental illness. Spending quality time with your child offers the opportunity to strengthen the parent-child relationship and buffers the negative effects of traumatic stress. Building and stacking items together while telling stories encourages problem solving and has similar effects on the developing brain. So in the spirit of building and stacking, we either have the large Duplo blocks, or we have the smaller ones, which it's just usually 3 or 4. We don't put a whole bag in there. And then we either have a pinwheel or blowing bubbles. And we have instructions on how the parent can help the child focus on the breath. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. There's age-appropriate books for the parent to read with the child, crayons, figures in here where if the child needs to tell their story by acting it out with figurines. And for babies, for texture, we often get a something for feel in here for a rattle, and that helps with them. And then we also have stress balls in both a child-size hand and an adult-size hand. And of course, again, instructions on the parent information sheet.
That is really amazing. Lots of things that I think most kids will certainly catch the attention and the eye of a child who has gone through that, and really just helping us as adults learn to, build resilience in children is something that is just a skill that we all need, whether it's our grandkids or our next door neighbor that's going through something, somebody who's lost a family member. And so thanks, Dr. Dallas. That was so helpful. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening, and don't forget, if you have any questions that you would like to be discussed on an upcoming episode, you can always email mentalhealth@fraser.church. Also, you can view video of our episodes on fraser.church/videos or on youtube.com/fraserchurch. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.